Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are. It's one of those things, isn't it? Whether you're in Asia, Africa, Europe, North America, South America, or Australia, it's either morning, noon, or night. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. I'm here today because, well, I'm here to commemorate a very special birthday. I'm here to commemorate the birthday of the greatest basketball player that ever lived. One known as William Fenton Russell, aka Bill Russell, who was born in West Monroe, Louisiana on February 12th, 1934. He was the second child of Katie and Charlie Russell Sr., who already had one son, and you can probably guess it was Charlie Russell Jr. And Charlie became a playwright and famous in his own right. When William was 8 years old, the Russells moved to Oakland, California. They lived in the projects, and the projects then are like the projects now, a tough place to grow up. William was picked on by neighborhood bullies because he was frail, sickly, and he was shy. Katie Russell told her son that one day he would have to stand up for himself. That day came when he was jeered and slapped by a group of 5 boys. When he ran to his mother, looking for consolation, Katie Russell grabbed him by the arm and went looking for the boys. Bill thought she was going to initiate a fight with them, but instead, she made William fight all 5. He won just 2. No, heavyweight champion of the world was not in the future for William Fenton Russell, but he learned to stand up for himself. And after that, the bullying stopped. Now, this incident bonded William to his mother closer than ever. It was Katie Russell who pushed him to do things, who told him he could do things. And if she told him he could do something, he believed her implicitly. Unfortunately, Katie Russell died abruptly just a few years later when William was 12. She went into the hospital with flu-like symptoms and she never recovered. Her death made William aloof and independent. His childhood was now in the rearview mirror. Manhood was ahead and it was approaching fast. With his father working long hours to provide for the family, there was no one readily available to lean on for support. So William had to learn to lean on himself. William became Bill when he entered McClymond High School. He stood 5'11", and he was rail thin and uncoordinated. He tried out for the junior varsity team, but he was cut. Over the next year, he grew 2 inches. He tried out for the junior varsity team again as a sophomore, and again, he did not make the team. Trying not to cry, Bill stood staring at the list of names of those who did make the team. As he wondered what he was going to do next in life, he noticed someone standing behind him. It was the coach of the varsity team, George Powles. They had a conversation, and here is how it went according to Bill. Powles said to me, "Wait for me after practice." So after practice, I met him at his car, and he drove me to the local Boys and Girls Club. Then he said, "I want you to play basketball every day." And he took $2 out of his wallet and he paid for my membership. And that's what I did. I played basketball every day after school and I honed my skills. Now, Powles also made Russell the 16th player on a 15-man varsity squad. Bill practiced with the team, then went to the Boys and Girls Club to work on what he had learned in practice. Powles believed that Bill was going to grow even taller. He believed he had to find a way to keep Bill involved until it all came together, but that was only part of it. He observed that Bill had an extraordinary desire to succeed. This desire was a melding of mental and physical courage combined with a determination to will something into existence. Powles realized that this desire not only needed to be nurtured and marveled at, it needed to be unleashed. By his senior year, Bill had grown 5 more inches and he was now 6'7". He had evolved from the third string center to the starting center, but he was still quite unremarkable. Said Frank Robinson, the Hall of Fame baseball player who was also on this basketball team, Bill couldn't get the ball in the basket unless he dunked it. But one of the problems that was holding Bill back was his high school played a slow setup style. In this style, the prototype center was big, he was bulky, and he was slow. He was a mobile obstacle more than an athlete. On offense, the center sent bruising picks and bullied smaller defenders around the basket to score. On defense, the center's job was to elbow, push, shove, and trip players. Bill did none of these things. He made his presence felt by playing defense and rebounding in an unusual manner. On defense, he used his speed and length to angle scorers away from the basket, block shots, and steal passes. Whereas the rebounding of the day was predicated on flat footed boxing out and letting the ball come to you, Bill's offensive and defensive rebounding was predicated on anticipation, position, and leaping ability. Now, this baffled college scouts, this skill set that he had. They didn't know what to make of it. He seemed to be playing the game all wrong, not only for a center, but for any position on the court. What they failed to factor into the Russell equation was that Bill was a late bloomer. He was still growing mentally and physically. In addition to basketball, he had also participated in track and field. He excelled in the high jump, the broad jump, the hurdles, and the meters. Track and field allowed him to study the mental makeup of individuals. Basketball gave him the opportunity to study the mental makeup of a team. In addition to his participation in both basketball and track and field, Bill Russell added extra classes to his curriculum that allowed him to graduate in 3.5 years. When Bill graduated from high school, he was only 17 years old. His body and his mind had not yet come together athletically. Because Bill finished high school early, he was eligible to participate on the California's All-Star team. Now, this team constituted young players looking to hone and showcase their skills for college scouts. For 2 months, the squad would tour the Pacific Northwest, riding Greyhound buses and playing against the best high school talent towns along the way had to offer. The tour wound through Idaho, Oregon, Washington, and British Columbia, Canada. Powles pushed for Bill's inclusion, and it was granted. Bill recounted, quote, "Getting to go on that tour was luck. What would happen along the way was magic," end quote. With nothing to do but concentrate completely on basketball, it all began to come together for Bill. Quote, "As the tour went further north into Canada, the roads stretched hundreds of miles between stops. This sometimes gave me 12 straight hours of mental basketball on the Greyhound. The tour was one of those rare times when fantasy and reality are so close together they feed off each other," end quote. Bill Russell developed a habit of studying the moves of others through a mental camera that recorded everything. With that accomplished, he began to analyze their tendencies. Then he began doing that to the player he was going up against, then to the whole team. Said Bill, quote, "On the Northwest tour, we were playing for fun. An acrobatic block might draw an ooh or an ah, or even a handshake from your teammates. I blocked so many shots that my teammates began referring to them as Russell moves, which pleased me. They were acknowledging that I had a trademark they admired, and this was the first sign that my basketball personality would be built around defense," end quote. In addition, his tour squad played an up-tempo brand of basketball. It gave Bill the freedom to use his running and jumping abilities together. Bill's mental and physical abilities in relation to basketball grew exponentially during the tour. By the time it ended, Bill had found out he was not only good, he was unstoppable. When he returned home from the tour, his father had good news. A college scout by the name of Hal DiGiulio from the University of San Francisco had called a couple of times trying to reach him. DiGiulio had been directed to Russell by Dick Lawless, a USF forward, which is University of San Francisco forward, who had played in a pickup game against Russell. Now, a decent college player, Lawless had been shut down and embarrassed by this high schooler, said Lawless. Every time I tried to put the ball up, he slammed it down my throat. Lawless was emphatic that DiGiulio needed to see Russell play. So DiGiulio attended Bill's last game for McClymond, a game in which Bill scored a career-high 14 points. DiGiulio favorably reported what he had observed to Phil Woolpert, the head coach of the University of San Francisco, and a decision was made to bring him in for a tryout. But by then, Bill had graduated. It was on the Pacific Northwest tour. When DiGiulio and Russell talked, Hal asked Bill if he would be interested in coming to the university for a tryout. Without hesitation, Bill said yes, because Bill believed San Francisco was my only choice, my one choice, the one choice that I would ever get. Upon his first sighting of Bill, Coach Phillip Woolpert had reservations. Russell looked uncommonly thin for a center, and as Woolpert put it, he was so ungainly. Now, the workup was not in a game. They didn't scrimmage. It consisted of performing a series of drills. One thing was immediately apparent to Woolpert, quote, he could jump. I couldn't believe my eyes. Oh, how he could jump, end quote. At the end of the session, Woolpert neither offered a scholarship or dismissed the idea, instructing Bill to take the entrance exam as the next step. When Bill passed the entrance examination, he was offered his one and only basketball scholarship. It was a dream come true for Bill, and it was a shot in the dark for Woolpert. Woolpert's courage to offer Bill a scholarship was based on a hope and a prayer. A hope that Bill would be decent enough to allow USF to be competitive. A prayer that Bill would be a diamond in the rough. The USF Dons were considered a level below powerhouse schools such as Cal State, Santa Clara, UCLA, and USC. These schools not only had scouts, but alumni positioned all over the West to identify and recruit talent. These schools, and even junior colleges, had passed on Bill Russell. Could everyone be wrong? Woolpert wondered. By the end of Russell's freshman season, the answer was a definite yes. They had all been wrong. In his freshman year at the University of San Francisco, William Fenton Russell set new school records. From being a player who could barely score in high school, Bill was now averaging 20 points a game. But wait, there's more. Russell not only averaged 20 points a game, he averaged 20 rebounds a game and an untold number of blocks. Woolpert's hope and prayer had been answered. Bill was better than decent, and he had found a diamond in the rough. But Bill Russell's sophomore year fizzled when Casey Jones, the best varsity player from the year before, was lost for the season due to surgery. In addition, Bill was disgruntled with being platooned with last year's starting center. The tradition of a center garnering playing time is nothing new, but because the player was white, it had nowhere near the impact Bill did. The specter of racism permeated Bill's attitude and his thoughts. Bill wondered if Woolpert was incompetent or racist. As a result, Bill's sophomore year resulted in a disappointing 14-7 season. Though Russell was not a jock, he was a diva. He demanded attention and coddling and special handling. He could be uncooperative and uncommunicative if he was not handled properly. Woolpert had experienced a hard-scrabbled upbringing. He didn't get coddled, and he wasn't about to coddle any player, thinking it would give Bill a big head. He was also a World War II veteran who believed in weeding out weaknesses. He could see Bill had a special talent, and instead of pampering, he pushed him. Russell was too immature to understand. Woolpert was too indifferent to explain. Both Russell and Woolpert were growing at their craft and as men. The 1954 season would be the coming out party for Bill Russell, Phil Woolpert, and the University of San Francisco Dons. After losing to UCLA in the third game of the season, Woolpert moved Hal Perry, another black player, into the starter lineup. This move boldly stated to Bill that Woolpert did not favor white players over black players. He cared about winning. This changed Russell's attitude and thus changed the team's altitude. One of the biggest solidifiers of the team's chemistry came when USF traveled to the All College Tournament in Oklahoma City. On arrival, they were told that only the white players could stay at the hotel. The black players would have to stay at the Oklahoma City College dormitories. The team, consisting of 11 white and 4 black players, voted unanimously to stay as a group at the dormitories. Before the first game, when fans started throwing coins at them, Bill navigated the situation differently than he would have the year before. Instead of attributing their actions to racism and becoming surly, Russell joked to Woolpert, "Coach, can you pick up those coins? That's the only money I'm ever going to make in college." With Bill Russell on board, the team was locked, loaded, and lethal. The unranked University of San Francisco won the tournament, defeating the number 17 ranked Wichita State and the number 8 ranked George Washington in the finals. The University of San Francisco Dons ran the table for the rest of the season, finishing with a record of 23-1. They had not lost a game since that third game of the season against UCLA, whom they had defeated in a rematch. At the end of the season, the Dons were bracketed as the number 1 seed in the West of the NCAA tournament. After 4 wins, they found themselves in the finals with the previous year's winner, the LaSalle University Explorers of Philadelphia. Now, the Explorers were well known with their star Tom Gola, and they had taken last year's NCAA tournament by storm. Actually, they rolled over everybody, and they were favored to win against a little-known team from the West. The consensus was that finally the Dons would be put in their place. But, Bill Russell scored 23 points and he collected 25 rebounds to lead the Dons to a 77-63 win. At the end of it all, William Fenton Russell was named the NCAA's tournament's most valuable player of 1954. But wait, there's more. The next season, the University of San Francisco went undefeated for the entire season, including the NCAA tournament. Bill Russell ended his collegiate career winning 55 consecutive games, an NCAA record at the time. Not bad for a guy who was cut from his high school junior varsity team not once, but twice. Not bad for a guy who was the 16th player on the 15-man squad. Not bad for a guy who didn't start a game until he was a senior. Not bad for a guy who was only offered a scholarship by only one college. Let's factor in that Russell was also a collegiate track and field champion during those 4 years at USF, that he could have competed in both the high jump and basketball at the 1956 Olympic Games. Bill chose basketball and won a gold medal, and that team still owns the largest margin of victory in Olympic game history. So 2 national championships, a 55-game winning streak, an Olympic gold medal. We now see what George Powles, Dick Lawless, and Hal DiGiulio saw in Bill Russell before it happened. They saw a winner. And not only a winner, they saw a champion. As the adage goes, champions are born, not made. The Bill Russells of the world don't know how to lose. It's a foreign concept. They can't conceive of it. It's a rare occurrence that only occurs when everything that could go wrong does go wrong. But even then, it's not a guarantee because champions can often up their play to win, even when everything is going wrong. Before 1956, the Boston Celtics had never won an NBA championship. With Bob Cousy, Jim Luskatoff, Ed McCauley, Jack Nicholls, and Bill Sharman, they had led the league in scoring the most points per game the year before. but they had also led the league in giving up the most points per game the year before. The head coach, Arnold Red Auerbach, had never seen Bill Russell play, but based upon the breathtaking reports he had received from people who had, knew that Bill Russell was the missing piece, and he had to get him at any cost. So Auerbach made a deal with the St. Louis Hawks, who had the number 2 position in the draft. The Hawks would draft Russell, then trade him to the Celtics for All-Star Ed McCauley and highly rated Cliff Hagan. On the draft day of April 30th, 1956, the Boston Celtics dynasty began. That one move alone, paid instant dividends. The Boston Celtics won the NBA championship that very same year, 1956, winning it against the team who had traded Bill Russell to them, the St. Louis Hawks. The next year, the Celtics went to the finals again, losing only because Bill Russell went down with a severely sprained ankle in Game 3. They went to the finals again the year after that and won. They went to the finals again for 7 more consecutive years, winning 8 finals in a row. In 13 years with Bill Russell, the Boston Celtics went to the NBA Finals 12 times, winning 11 of them. Over those 13 years, the guards on the team changed. The forwards on the team changed. The backup centers on the team changed. But as long as Bill Russell was on that team, the Celtics won championships. If we add up Russell's collegiate, Olympic, and professional years, Bill Russell won 14 championships over 16 years, easily making him the winningest athlete in the history of sports. And now, you know why. Oh, don't you? I've given you all the clues. It's staring you right in the face. Well, if you haven't figured it out, here it is. Bill Russell, William Fenton Russell, was a genius with a capital G. Yes, he had quickness, he had speed, he had superlative reflexes. He was fearless, he was incisive, he was deceptively strong. But the key to Russell's extraordinary and revolutionary defense, and it's weird to say this in reference to sports, was a superior mind. But don't take my word for it. Here is what Red Auerbach had to say. The foundation of Russell's brilliant play, however, is not blocking shots, rebounding, or his other purely physical skills. It is his mind, his intelligence. People think of him as just a big guy with fantastic coordination, but when the game is on, he approaches genius. Bill Russell gauged angles, masses, distances in relation to his speed. He deciphered his opponents and moves and decoded their tendencies as if they were puzzles. He sometimes allowed them to score just so he could take that away from them if the game became tight later on. He practiced psychology on his opponents, what they liked and what they did not like doing on the court, how they responded to certain teammates or the coach. He studied his teammates to analyze their strengths and weaknesses, to understand what motivated them, what gave them courage, and what caused them fear. His thousands of block shots were not demonstrative volleyball slams. They were soft deflections and redirections of shots into the hands of teammates. His ball steals looked like bad passes that were accidentally thrown to him. Are you catching on, ladies and gentlemen? To Bill, the game was more of a mental exercise than a physical one. He controlled his teammates as well as the opponents, all while pretending he was just part of the action. Bill Russell played the game of basketball like a chess game. He knew who the pawns, knights, bishops, rooks, and queens were. He knew who the king was. It was William Fenton Russell. As Jerry West would later describe him, when the national anthem was played, I always found my eyes going to Bill. He did it just right, standing there for the anthem. He was a statue, but there was a grace to him. Even standing still, grace. There's a photo where he is standing at midcourt. His hands are over his hips. He looks very regal, like a king looking over his fiefdom. He had real presence, and I'll never forget it. End quote. And neither will the world of basketball or athletics. William Fenton Russell, aka Bill Russell, was indeed one of a kind. Happy birthday to William Fenton Russell, the greatest basketball player. That's right, I said it. Better than Will Chamberlain, Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, or Magic Johnson, or even LeBron James. The greatest basketball player, that's right, that ever lived. Goodbye, everybody. I had a great time. February 12th, 1934. Guy wins. he goes to 12 NBA championships in 13 years. Wins 11 of them. Gold medal, 55 consecutive games. Think about it, ladies and gentlemen. Think about it. Happy birthday, Bill Russell.